Everybody, welcome. Simon Rosenberg here from Hopium Chronicles. I've got another one of our interviews with our 12 top candidates we're supporting for the House in our campaign we're calling Winning the House this year. It's my dear friend, Andrei Cherny, who's joining us. He's running for Congress in Arizona 1, the first district of Arizona. Andrei's a dear old friend. I'm really proud of him. He's kicking ass out there. And Andrei, welcome to our community. And I think what we'd like to do is to have you just walk us through, tell us about the race, the district, how things are going, your opponent. Just give us the lay of the land. Let's get right into it, because I know that people, I do want to acknowledge that the Hopium community has taken a great interest in this House series. We've raised over $350,000 in just a few weeks for the 12 of you. It's a remarkable response, but it's also a sign of just the sense of intensity that people have about the House and the understanding of the need to flip it. And I know that you're going to be there helping us get that done in November. So thank you for running, and just give us an update on how things are going.
Yeah, excited to do so. And not only is what the Hopium community has done here so enormous, but it's so appreciated. What you're doing in my race and the other top House races, what you're doing really for the state of Arizona, including with the work with Ruben Gallego, is so key. And I'll talk about it in a second. But Arizona, and you've been saying this for a long time, Arizona is going to be ground zero for this election. And this district is in so many ways ground zero of Arizona. And so what this community is doing has been remarkable. And I've been proud to be part of the Hopium community since day one, but to see it grow and to see the kind of energy and enthusiasm that's grown up around this community in really just a couple of short years, it's one of the most remarkable things going on in American politics. So thank you to you, but thank you to really all of the members of the community, and you are out there speaking to the Maricopa County Democratic Party and getting everybody energized, and so really appreciate that on all fronts. As you said, I'm running in Arizona's first congressional district. This district is Phoenix, the northern half really of Phoenix, all of Scottsdale, all of Paradise Valley, Fountain Hills. It is a community that is really one of the small number of places in America where you really have to build a coalition. This district is 37% Republican, 32% independent, 27% Democrat. And yet we've seen Democrats be able to win over and over again here. This is a district that President Biden carried in 2020. It's a district that all of our statewide Democrats carried in 2022, Mark Kelly and Katie Hobbs, all the way down the ticket by 4% or more. And represented currently by a guy named David Schweikert, who is one of the worst of the worst. And I'm sure everybody says that. This is a guy who keeps his profile low. He's not somebody who's out on Twitter all the time. But as I sometimes say to people, just because you're boring doesn't mean that you're moderate. And this is a guy who voted to overturn the election on January 6th, wants a national no exceptions ban on abortion, basically taking the 1864 law in Arizona and making it national. Somebody who says that we need to, quote, break up the FBI because they're too mean to Donald Trump. Somebody who's to the right of people like Matt Gaetz and Ted Cruz and others on issues like the PACT Act and so many other things. I always say I have to acknowledge that he has a bipartisan achievement in the sense that he's one of 5 people in history to be unanimously censured by both parties. So as you know, it takes a lot to get everybody in Washington to agree on something. And when everybody agrees that you're corrupt, that says something. But he barely won in 2022. He won by 0.85% against a very underfunded, little-known, relatively opponent. He actually would have lost in this current district lines in 2020 in the last presidential year. So in a presidential year with abortion on the ballot and driving so much of the conversation, we have a really strong shot of beating him. And I think we're building the campaign to do so. We have outraised him every single quarter of the campaign. I'm the only challenger in America to do that versus an incumbent every quarter. And with the kind of support we're getting in this kind of district, it matters a lot. I'll just say one last thing about the district, and it gets back to what you've been doing and what the Hopium community has been doing in Arizona, which is, as we all know, there's only 5 seats we need to flip to take the House of Representatives. This is going to have to be probably one of them. But if you think about the Venn diagram, this is also the swing district of Arizona. And that means it has a huge impact on Ruben Gallego's race. And it has a huge impact, of course, on the presidential race. And most people I talk to wouldn't get it in the same way that the Hopium community gets it. But you've been out there saying that for Biden, if he wins as he has to, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan, that gets him to 269, right? And so that's why you've been focused on Nebraska's congressional district, and why you've been focused on Arizona and North Carolina, because those are the places that Biden is going to have to win. I truly believe whoever wins this district, Biden or Trump, they're certainly going to win the state of Arizona, and I believe that whoever wins the state of Arizona is going to be the next president of the United States. So there's a lot riding on us getting this right, and again, that's why I'm so grateful for all of your help.
Well, Andrei, one of the reasons that I have been so bullish on Arizona is for the same reason I've been bullish on North Carolina, which is that the person leading the top of the ticket for the Republicans is, one of the most extreme political figures of our time, and failed political figures in our time in your state. Can you talk a little bit about what's happened to the Republican Party in Arizona, in addition to your own candidate? That's a backdrop to what's happening, because it seems like when I came out to the Maricopa County dinner that I spoke at a few months ago, it was just after the 1864 Supreme Court decision.
Right.
And you were there. I mean, the intensity in that room was kind of incredible, right?
Yeah.
And it really felt like that there was this palpable sense that it was too much. The Republicans had gone too far, that this had now become dangerous for the people of Arizona. I mean, talk a little bit about how all of their extremism is manifesting in this cycle, not just what happened before.
Well, it really compounds itself. I could talk a little bit about my background in a bit, but as you know, I was the chair of the Arizona Democratic Party right in the aftermath of the 2010 elections. And we had Trumpism before Trump in Arizona. Some of these names may be somewhat familiar to some the people in this community, but people like Jan Brewer, people like Sheriff Joe Arpaio, were really taking that same kind of hardcore, racially tinged, anti-democratic politics and bringing it to the state. And we knew that it was not going to play in the long term. Back when I became state party chair, I became state party chair in the aftermath of the 2010 elections, when Republicans had all of the statewide elected offices for the first time since the 1960s, had super majorities in the state legislature. Today, you have 2 U.S. Senate seats where a Democrat was elected to serve. One of them is now being represented by an independent, but that's a different conversation in Kyrsten Sinema. But 2 Democrats won both Senate seats, won the governorship, Secretary of State, Attorney General, and are 2 votes away from flipping the state legislature to be Democratic once again, or 1 vote away from a tie. And that's because of this transformation. And the district where I'm running again is in so many ways emblematic. This is Barry Goldwater's home district. This is John McCain's home district. Look, I sometimes say, if you still had a Mitt Romney kind of John McCain style Republican Party, you'd probably have whoever represented that in this district, win handily. But that's not where the Republican Party is nationally, and it's certainly not where the Republican Party is in Arizona. It's certainly not who David Schweikert is, or who Kari Lake is, or who Donald Trump is. And so in this kind of district, if you're able to really build that coalition of Democrats and Republicans and independents who are maybe conservative on some issues, maybe especially economic issues, but are looking for people who are actually results oriented, who are problem solvers, who actually care about getting things done, then you can really be able to flip a district like this, and we've seen that play out.
So talk a little bit, I spoke to Ruben the other day. We check in every few weeks, and he's very excited about what he is feeling on the ground, the opportunity, the sense that Lake really is understood to be an extremist. But talk a little bit about, we've talked about them. Now let's talk about you. I mean, what's the story that you're telling about your life, your journey, the issues that you're focusing on? Give us a little bit of a pitch about you and how you're talking about your career. And I will say one thing, everyone, I'm going to embarrass Andrei. But Andrei back here when he was a young guy, and we've known each other for a few years, was always seen as one of the smartest guys that we all knew. I mean, the respect for Andrei in DC and policymaking community and the political community back here in Washington could not be higher. I mean, there have been fewer people, I think, that have been held in higher regard or with more respect of their intelligence, their integrity, their decency, right, than Andrei. And it's really an honor to be on his team. And I had to put that out there. I didn't want to wait any longer, Andrei. But I mean, take that now as somebody who's worked in DC, built a business, become a CEO of a company, very successful company, now running for Congress. Walk us through that journey a little bit, if you could.
Well, first of all, extremely grateful, and yeah, won't embarrass you further about.
We can do that on the next one.
All right, for the sequel.
Yeah.
I think for me it starts with the fact that if we had been talking like this 2-3 years ago, I would have not thought I'd be running for Congress. And even though I had, early on in my career worked in Washington, but I'm running because of, frankly, the threat to our democracy. And it's, for me, really personal. All 4 of my grandparents were concentration camp survivors. And my parents were actually born into a free Western-style democracy in Eastern Europe, in Czechoslovakia, where they were born. And that democracy fell. And as the father of a 16-year-old and 13-year-old, the idea that my grandparents, my parents survived everything that they survived, went through everything that they went through, for me to just sit back because maybe it wasn't convenient while our democracy truly teeters, while freedoms like the right to choose and many others are being taken away from us, was just abhorrent and was something I wasn't willing to do. I grew up a son of immigrants, classic immigrant upbringing family that struggled to make ends meet. We were on food stamps. I watched my parents work incredibly hard, had the good fortune, because America believed in a kid like me, to have public schools and public libraries and Pell Grants that let me go to college, work my way through Harvard. As you said, we met, nearly 30 years ago now, worked in the White House for President Clinton. As I always remind people in our district, back when we balanced the budget and did so in a way that actually created economic growth and invested in the children's health insurance program and expanded college access. So fiscal responsibility done the right way. So worked in Washington early on, enlisted after 9/11 to serve as a Navy Reserve Intelligence Officer. Have lived in Arizona now 20 plus years with my wife, who was a 4th generation Arizonan, and was Assistant Attorney General in Arizona, where we prosecuted financial fraud, went after some of the big border smuggling rings, and so something, of course, very relevant to the conversations going on now, but took down a bunch of those rings. As I said, served as state Democratic Party chair, and then, as you mentioned, spent the past 10 years building a business to help people and corporations fight climate change with their dollars, and do so in a responsible manner, and grew that. And as I said, we're not for the level of real trepidation I feel, but real concern, real fear I have about where our democracy is going, both here and around the world. I wouldn't be doing this, but I really believe 2024 is for all the marbles. And whether it's fighting for our democracy, fighting for our freedom, fighting for issues like what we're seeing in the climate crisis, where the next few years are going to be critical. Are we going to build on the Inflation Reduction Act, or are we going to go in a very different direction that doesn't allow us to come back from that again? This is going to be playing out. And so that's why I got into this race.
That's great. And one of the things I hope to work with you on, Andrei, when you get here, is to retroactively rename the Inflation Reduction Act.
I wish.
My title for that bill is going to be the most important climate legislation in human history, and
Right.
that's so maybe we can work on that together.
We'll do it
when you come back here.
Yeah.
Talk about your first ad just went up, and you had to go through the process of deciding, what was on, when you do an ad. I think it's your first ad. Maybe you had a bio ad that went up earlier.
No,
You have a new ad, right? Talk a little bit about why you chose certain issues in that ad and how that reflects the conversation happening on the ground in the district. Because whenever you do this first ad, right, it's very important. It says a lot about you and what your understanding of where the dialogue and discourse is and what matters to people. So can you talk a little bit about the ad? And I'll be sharing the ad in this when I release this, tomorrow. But give us some understanding about that.
Yeah, it's you have 30 seconds, and so there's every word counts. And as you're sitting there with your team, as you know, hashing it all out, you're debating commas and breaths and things like that. But I thought there was a few important things. I think number one is this is this is a ad that introduces me in a lot of ways to voters in the district, and it's important that we do that now. The June-July time period is critical for our race. We, should be acknowledged. I'm not the official nominee yet. We have a primary that the actual date of that is July 30th. We've way outraised 5 other people who are running, 2 to 1. Have endorsements from everybody from Mayor Kate Gallego of Phoenix to the mayors of Fountain Hills and mayors of Paradise Valley, and the only Democrat on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, and League of Conservation Voters, Brady Packagans, on and on. So, are in a strong position, but we have to be not just talking to a primary audience, we have to be running our general election audience right now. And it's so important to do so now, especially in our race, because it's in some ways different than maybe some of the other 11 races on your list, because this is not a place like California or New York or some of these other places. This is Arizona, and we have a projected $820 million of political advertising spend that's going to be on air in this state. Part of that in Kirsten Engel's district as well, but Phoenix media market being the lion's share of that, the great majority of that. And come September, October, it's going to be really hard for us to break through, even as we're spending millions of dollars. So we have to get up on air now. And so I had to introduce people to who I am, my story, because we know that there's 7-8% of people who voted for Mark Kelly last time and then just didn't have enough knowledge about the Democrat to do anything other than vote for David Schweikert. They didn't want to reelect him. They didn't like him. His numbers are terrible. But if they're going to vote for a Democrat, they need to know it's somebody who has experience and credentials and a track record to get things done. So that was one important thing. The other important thing, and this was really important, especially to me in this ad, was that we talk about the stakes of the election, that we really raise the bar for people about what's at stake in 2024, and get people thinking about the election in that way. Because I think that if we're framing that election as this battle for democracy, that's going to be so important. We saw that in 2022. You've been talking a lot about that. The political nerd in me, if you'll give me a minute to reflect on it. 88 years ago this week, Franklin Roosevelt accepted his renomination as president and gave a very famous speech. He said, there's a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given; of other generations, much is required. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. And that's a really famous quote. But what a lot of people don't realize is the next sentence he explained what he was talking about. And he said, there are places all over the world where people have lost their democracy and freedom. This is 1936. This is 3 years before World War II even started, 5 years before America came into it. He said that's what we're fighting for. He said that the work they were doing in the New Deal was not just a war against want and destitution and economic depression. It is a war for the survival of democracy. We are fighting for a great and precious form of government for ourselves and the world. I think that's the fight we're in. We talk about Inflation Reduction Act, the worst named law in history. That's fighting for democracy. It's showing not just in America but around the world that our democracy can work, that we can build an economy of the future. The CHIPS Act, which is so important, is about fighting for democracy. Yes, we have to stand with Ukraine and our allies, but we also have to show all those people in India and Kenya and Malaysia, all these places around the world, that we have a democracy that works, that when 80% of people want an assault weapons ban or want comprehensive immigration reform or any of these other things that the vast majority of people agree on, that Washington can work and Washington can actually deliver on these things, that we can build a ladder of economic opportunity. All of these things matter. And so I wanted to get people to understand the stakes of this election. And so, refer to that and try to do all that in 30 seconds.
It's a good ad. You did a good job. And you also talk about the importance of abortion and reproductive freedom. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, to me, whenever I talk about that, and I frame it as part of democracy and freedom, about this idea that my wife and my daughter and women of our community and many others have the right to contraceptive coverage. David Schweikert voted against that. Have the right to fertility treatments, and yes, have the right to abortion services as well. And talked about in the ad about what I did as a CEO to make that happen, because I wanted to make it really tangible. People hear so much about the rhetoric, and I said, when I was a CEO, and Roe was struck down, I stepped up and made sure every one of our employees, no matter what state they lived in, had access to abortion services. Because a lot of times people just tune out politicians these days, and being able to break through that and say, no, I've actually done something, I've actually generated results is important as well. Look, as I said, this is Barry Goldwater's home district. A lot of people, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, don't like the idea of politicians, and especially Washington, D.C., getting involved in their own bedrooms and in their own family and their own doctor's office. And so that libertarian strain of thinking about this from the prism of freedom is really important, especially in a district like mine.
Well, that was great, Andrei. And I want to say that before I let you have the final word, that what Andrei said about resources and money really matters here. This is different than the races like in California and New York, where the presidential race isn't going to be contested on television. And as Andrei said, I mean, we in 2018, when I was a senior advisor to the DCCC, one of our theories of the case during that election was that we had in 2016, we had significant drop off from the Clinton numbers down to the races below. And part of our, meaning that there were percentage 2, 3, 4, 5% that voted for Clinton, but then didn't vote for the Democratic candidate. And one of our theories of the case was that we needed to get up on the air early, focusing on name ID, so that people understood that if they were unhappy with the Republicans, there was a Democrat they could touch and be.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of work around bio and around story, about not necessarily about issues as much, but just around the person, the stories. Like you have a very compelling story. And we found that by going up, even with low levels of advertising and staying visible and trying to be loud in all the ways that you can, this stuff really mattered in 2018. I mean, we didn't overthink that election, I think, in terms of how we had really good candidates with compelling stories, and we let them tell those stories. But we also were aggressive about going up early, as you are, in order for exactly the same reason that you're describing, which is that you're going to be in a crowded media environment, and you need to make sure that people understand that you exist, that you're there, right? So they don't skip you when they vote for Joe Biden and Rubin and so on. And also that you can help Rubin and Joe Biden win their election. And so I just want everyone to realize that I think what Andrei said is actually how we flipped the house in 2018. The exact strategy he described, which I didn't know he was going to say, by the way, was how we flipped the house. So your investment in this race. I mean, there are a handful of our 12 where money is really going to matter a little bit more than some of the others. All of them are in difficult media markets. You have a very expensive market. Many of the California and New York markets are very expensive. But Andrei's race is, you get sort of double or triple on your investment, because it's also helping Ruben Gallego win and helping Joe Biden win, in addition to helping us flip the House. And so you get huge return on your dollar for the investment that some of you have already made in this race. Thank you. Right. We've raised over $30,000 for Andrei in just the last few weeks, but we got more to do here. And so thank you all for listening to this. Andrei's my dear friend. He's an amazing guy. I'm really proud of him for stepping up and having the courage to run. It's not an easy time to get into politics. And, you know, he's going to win this race if he gets the resources and the help and the volunteers that he needs to get this done. And so, Andrei, thank you. And I want to leave it to you to close it out. Any final thoughts you have for everyone as you make your pitch to everybody?
Yeah, look, I'll just say thank you back to you and back to the Hopium community. You know, there's not a lot of places in the country that are anything like what this community has come to be, and it's really unique. It's really special. I know that the folks who are part of it appreciate that. But you know, to see $30,000 coming into a race like mine, and in my race, we're not putting that in the bank. That's going directly back out, not just for TV ads, but for mail and signs and water for our volunteers who are knocking on doors in 113-degree heat on a daily basis. It's important. You know, as Simon has said, June counts. This last FEC deadline is going to shape so much of what happens, and for us it means really having the resources to get that message out, tell people about my bio, who I am, my background, having served in the military, having been a prosecutor, having run a company, doing all that before the tidal wave of presidential advertising really hits. So we are all in this together, and really appreciate everything this community is doing.
Andrei, good luck. Everybody, please
don't
make a donation to the 12 or to Andrei specifically. This one really matters to me. Let's get this done. Bring it home for Andrei. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Simon.